34-16 in Champaign, Illinois. The Ohio State Buckeyes, a winner over the Illini in a game where the outcome didn't ever really feel like it was out of reach. Ohio State led comfortably. But gosh, it really wasn't a prototypical Ohio State win. And maybe that's something we need to either get used to or dive a little bit deeper into. I'm Brendan Gulick along with Anthony Moeglin. Glad to have you here on Buckeye Roundtable, our postgame show after an Ohio State decisive win. They covered the spread. Their defense played like the defense has played regularly throughout the year. Anthony, they had 3 turnovers and a fourth one where they forced a punt where the punter ended up taking a knee on the punt accidentally, qualified, or quasi worked out like a turnover. In so many ways, it was a great game. And yet at the beginning of the day, this is not at all what I thought Ohio State was going to look like today. So before I go on some of my thoughts, I'm interested. Why don't you tell me how you feel?
Yeah. My initial thought when this game closed up, and I kind of took a second to just catch my breath. I went back to the conversation you and I had pregame before Minnesota last week. And you told me hey, I want this to look like an Ohio State win. I want us to score. I want us to be, deep balls, the whole thing. And we go in against Minnesota, and they do that. And they look the part. Carnell Tate, big throw or big catch. He's got over 100 yards receiving. Jeremiah Smith has 70 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. They're running the ball at will. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing and looking like the Ohio State Buckeyes that we're used to. And you're like, okay, last week I identified that as mostly like a turning point, right? Where it's like, all right, this is going to look different going forward. The training wheels are off of Julian Sayin. He got his road win. He got his first big Big Ten win. And then they come out today, and you're like, all right, I'm excited to see this. Illinois' pass defense stinks. They could really blow this thing open. And then they just put that offense back in a box, and they wrapped that thing up, and they're like, all right, we're just gonna play hey, we're gonna protect Julian from making mistakes, and we're just gonna let the defense lead us to victory, and we're gonna get out of Champaign with a win. I think you make a good point. Is this something we have to start getting used to? That may be the question, and that may be the thing that we have to reckon with. But man, I was excited to see a continuation of last week, and it just didn't happen from the offensive side of the ball.
So I just find myself in this weird place, and I sort of wrote about it in our game thread that we had over on Buckeye Roundtable, and you can see the link below as it crawls across the bottom. We'd love to have you join us. Just some thoughts around, look, this is the golden age of Ohio State football. For the last quarter century, literally we've seen basically one season that by their own standards was terrible, even though it was decidedly average. And so you're not going to win every game by a blowout margin. You're not going to derail every single opponent. The goal is to win, just flat out win. Mm-hmm. There's different ways to win. And obviously, anybody who watches college football anywhere in the country can look at this team right now and say that is a national championship caliber defense. Mm-hmm. Wild to say that after they lost 8 draft picks from last year, but that is clearly a national championship caliber defense. Now, I don't want to sit here and tell you that I think that there's an offensive problem, because I actually thought the defense struggled a little bit against tempo, and they haven't really seen a lot of that so far this year. I definitely want to dive into that with you. It wasn't a perfect day for anybody, but the defense was opportunistic and they were relentless. And I thought Illinois never got anything going. They could never run the ball. And if you expect to just throw the ball on this Ohio State defense, you're in trouble. So we'll get to all that in a second. But my thought process is around, okay, Ohio State just won by 18 points on the road against a top 20 team in the country.
Yes.
What are you complaining about? And then at the same token, it's well, look at what you need to do to be able to win those big games. And you have the blueprint because you saw it last year. Not every team is exactly the same. You got a young quarterback who is still taking good steps, but Julian is clearly showing he's capable. And so it all these thoughts are flying in my head, and I imagine many of our viewers. Is this a Heartline thing? Is this like a strategic thing? Is it Illinois just played a deep shell and basically said, you know what, your skill position guys are so good, we refuse to let those guys beat you. You're going to have to just dink and dunk your way down the field over and over and over again. And unfortunately for Illinois, they gave Ohio State short field repeatedly, and the Buckeyes would score on it. So I just think there's a lot of ways to attack this, and I don't want to sound the alarm bells. It was a good win, but it wasn't it wasn't really the performance I thought I was going to see. And so it just has my attention. I don't think I'm not sitting here feeling like, this isn't going to go well. I'm still waiting for a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think it's fair too, because I think when you look at this Illinois game, but if this was maybe 3 weeks ago before Illinois played anybody or before Ohio State really got into the meat of their season, you're thinking, okay, what are these two teams going to be? But I think also what adds to this is that Illinois is fresh off of a drubbing at the hands of Indiana. Like, Indiana thumped that team that we just played. They beat them by 50, right? And you're like, okay, if Indiana does that, and we think that
it sounds outrageous. Is Indiana better than Ohio State?
Well, Indiana is up. They're beating Oregon in Oregon right now. And I'm
telling you, that team's pretty good. And I don't want to go to the extremes of, if I'm a Buckeye fan, thinking, there's a problem with a team in Bloomington. I don't think it's quite that yet, but they eviscerated this Illinois team.
Mm-hmm. And I think to add to that, there's context matters in all of this. I talked about it this week on our weekly shows. Hey, and you and I have talked about it a bunch. When teams play Ohio State, they're giving their best effort. So you're going to get the opponent's best. And that's obviously, you got to take that into account. And Illinois was trying their best to try to get this win today. But man, it's just, you can't help but compare it. And comparison obviously is the root of all things bad. But you look back and you see Indiana beat the brakes off this group, and then Ohio State didn't struggle. Like you said, it was in hand the whole time, but you're like, it just didn't feel or look right. And maybe it is the personality that this offense is going to be and this team's going to be, like a real slow grind you out and let our defense just carry, because that's what they've done so far.
Ohio State's tempo is, anybody that's paid any real attention to this team this year, whether you've heard it or you just notice it, it's obviously slower. It's as if they're operating at a glacial pace compared to years past. It doesn't seem to bother them in the sense that they're not getting quicker week after week. So how do you evaluate that? Well, is it they want to play that way because they think that's the best way they can win? They play that way because they feel like they have to? Is it they're slow walking Julian so much that they want to make sure everything is methodical? I don't know that I really buy that part of it. Is it Brian Hartline's style? Is that maybe different in the way that he wants to run an offense? I would think that Ryan Day would probably overrule that, even though they're developing the game plan in tandem. Like I said, you don't need to score 50 plus a game to win every game that you play, especially when you have a defense like that. But I noticed Ryan's body language on the sideline today, specifically around some of the really slow substitutions. And obviously there's some gamesmanship involved in some of that, right? If you make a late sub and you're the defense, you're not running 100% off the field. You're trying to make for it. But Ryan had a couple moments where he was going ballistic on the officials for allowing certain things. And so I wonder if there is a disconnect. And he kind of admitted on the TV copy afterward. Obviously, we're covering from home this week, not in Champaign. He sort of admitted on the TV broadcast at the end he wasn't happy with the way they finished the game. I just wonder if he wants to play at this tempo, because it doesn't feel like the offense that we've seen from Ryan for 7 years.
No, in the schematic or the X's and O's part of this is that it's a scary way to play offense in this day and age, because let's just say you catch Illinois on a hot day where they're ripping, or in 2 weeks you catch Penn State on a hot day, and let's say you start the game punt, and all of a sudden you're down 10. And this offense hasn't had to prove to themselves that they can play at a fast pace. I'm certain they can do it. I'm certain you could catch Jeremiah on a big ball, or you could catch Carnell on a big ball. But if you get into a game flow where it's not happening for you, that's hard, really, really, really hard to just flip the switch and snap out of it. That doesn't happen very often. And that's the scary part. I look at this drive chart, and you start the game, and again, they get into the low red zone. We're going to talk glowingly about the defense, but the offense gets into the red zone again and can't score a touchdown. So they kick a field goal, and then they have an interception on the ensuing Illinois drive, and then they go down and score a touchdown. You're up 10-0. That should feel, and honestly, it felt like to me, Brennan, that it was an 100-point lead, because this defense isn't giving up touchdowns. And then you go punt, field goal, touchdown. So then you're up 20-0 with 2 minutes left to go in the half. And you're like, all right, this feels really, really good. But to your point, Illinois goes down, kicks a field goal, comes out in the second half, takes the first drive right down the field, touchdown, and you're like, hey, this is a game now. This is a game.
And by the way, that last drive of the second half or of the second quarter, I mean, I realized that Ohio State stiffened up in a way inside that 5-yard line. That was sweet for sure. But most of that drive was way too easy. And it was when Illinois finally started going tempo. And you started to think like, all right, there's got to be there's a vulnerability in every single defense. It's an offensive game. Mm-hmm. If you give a quarterback enough time to protect, there is always going to be some way, some place to attack a defense. And maybe for Ohio State, maybe for this group, maybe it's tempo. I don't know. We haven't seen that this year. It's the first team that's been able to operate well like that.
And it's going to get a little bit more challenging because now you're consistently into Big Ten play, and you're going to start seeing teams. Ooh, Illinois executed with tempo, and now guess what? If Wisconsin,
UCLA's got nothing to lose. UCLA 100 plays.
Dude, look out when UCLA comes. Not to say they're going to beat you, but they're going to pull out all the stops. They're going to go for it on every fourth down because screw it. They're all interim head coaches. They're not going to have a job there in 2 months anyway. So they're just going to like throw caution to the wind. So it's a good point. But you play what you feel like is a good half, but because you shrunk the game all the way down, you know, in a real world, it's 20-14 with 10 minutes to go in the third quarter. And you're like, uh-oh. You are dominating this football game, feel like you're dominating it, and you're up a score. And in this case, it was up 10 points. But I don't know, man. I really thought that last week was going to be the tipping point, and they were going to have trust in Julian Sayin, and they were going to let this thing breathe and let this offense kind of grow. But it feels like to me, not to be just a Debbie Downer, but this offense took a step back today and reverted back to like that pre-Minnesota offense where they're just really methodical and intentionally methodical.
So I want to ask a question about the passing game, but for the plays that were clearly run calls, you see the game differently than I do because you played quarterback. Why do you think Hartline and company wanted to run so many just dives or smashes or power or whatever you want to call it, where you're basically just running in the A gap? I mean, it felt like they did that time and time and time again.
I make it make sense. I have no idea because you have what you think is a dynamic running back in Bo Jackson, and CJ Donaldson ends up having the most carries today. You know, the Ohio State goes 37 carries for 106. That's 2.9 a carry, 2.9 yards a carry. That's not going to get it done. Like, that's not good enough. That goes back to that. It makes you think of the Texas game where they had under 3 yards a carry. They had 77 yards total on the day. And it's like, where is the creativity in the run game? Like, that was something I thought Chip Kelly was like elite at. It was like, hey, I got great offensive linemen. I got great running backs. I'm gonna be very creative. They're just running it straight up the middle, straight up the middle, straight up the middle.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. No, listen, I mean, I get it, and I'm really not trying to have that mentality. It's a win. It's a top 20 team. It's a road game. You covered the spread. You never trailed. At one point, you led by 20. Like, what more do you want, right? I get all that. I acknowledge that, and that's why I'm sitting here, and I've tried to preface this depending on what people are popping in and out. You know, I'm not like sounding the alarm bells, but I am trying to figure out why we've seen a few instances of Ohio State playing like this. And is it just because it's young quarterback, it's early in the year? We've certainly seen, you know, where Julian's got a big arm and can let it breathe. I don't know. It's a good road win, and I guess I just walk away from this game going, all right, I'm paying a little more attention now to what's going on with this offense. Is this team good enough to win a national championship? Maybe. Their defense 100% is. Offensively, they certainly seem like they have the talent. They've developed for about half the season, and they've still got, you know, I would argue their toughest games in front of them. Obviously, the Texas game was a big one. This game left me feeling like for the first time this year, like I wanted more. I didn't feel this way after Texas, you know, the Grambling and OU, whatever. Washington, I truly, like, I walked out of that game going, okay, like, good win. First game on the road, going west is always harder. I think Washington's really good. Their quarterback's super athletic, like, good win. Came home, beat the brakes off Minnesota, like, felt good. This is the first time I'm kind of like, okay, fine.
Yeah. And I think what you said at the start is right. Like, are we, in the nice way, are we spoiled by great football for the past forever? And because this is, you'd be the number 17 team in the country by 3 scores and all that stuff, which is all true. But I think that this team's got goals and aspirations that are above beating the 17th team in the country by 16 point or 18 points. And I think Ryan, you're going to listen to Ryan on all his post game comments, which I'm excited to hear. He was irritated last week after they won by 40. My guess is he's going to be pretty irritated this week. Like, Julian saying threw for 166 and on the ground, they averaged less than 3 yards a carry. That's not winning football for them against the top level opponents in the country. And thankfully, they have the best defense in America because, truth be told, like, let's tell the truth about this. Like, this isn't to be negative or anything, but if they don't turn Illinois over 4 times and set themselves up with short fields 4 separate occasions, are we having a different conversation? The answer to that question is probably.
Yeah, but they did.
Yeah,
like it's 2 sides of the same argument. What team in America wouldn't want their defense to have 3 takeaways and then also capitalize on another team's mistake when Crimmins fielded a low snap on the punt and accidentally caught it with his knee on the ground. They lost 14 yards. I mean, think of it as a negative net 14. I said that backwards. A net negative 14-yard punt. It technically goes down as a rush. So Ohio State's, defensive rushing stats were a little bit skewed by that, but still, Illinois 27 carries for 47 yards. If you take that one out of it, 26 carries for 60 yards. So
61, but we'll give it to you.
61? Oh, yeah, it was 14. Yeah, you're right. 61. So, I mean, they were still basically a 2-yard per carry average, roughly. And you'll take that every single time, especially against a team that, I mean, if you ever watch Brett Bielema coach football,
dude,
all they do is care about run the football, stop the run, and make sure that your special teams are buttoned up. And the rest takes care of itself. That's how they win. That's how he's won his whole career. And Ohio State never let them run the football today at any point in the game. So, it was a really good defensive effort from that perspective.
Yeah, this defense is out of control. I'd say the one area where you're like, ooh, today, the one thing that stood out, and you talked about them using tempo and kind of moving the ball a little bit. The one thing that stood out was at times there was a lack of pass rush. And not saying that you need to get to the quarterback every time, but sometimes that pocket was really clean. And Altmaier's a good enough quarterback, and especially he's good, and he can stand back there and do his best to stand in a pocket and deliver a football. But this defense is out of control. I mean, even the drives they did have, like Illinois was required to make big plays, tight plays, tough plays, and nothing was given that was easy. Arvell Reese continues to be a just total game wrecker. He's unbelievable. Sonny Styles today, and this is what I thought was cool. You think back to some of those games that early on in the season already that have turned into blowouts, and you see some guys that have great games that are maybe unexpected. But in a game that felt tight, it started to feel like a little weird at times. Sonny Styles, your team captain, your team leader, stood up and had his best game. 10 tackles on the day, 8 solos, and was just everywhere at once. The big one was the almost goal line stop that they had where he ripped the dude down kind of on his side, and it was Altmaier. And instead of the ball being reached over across the goal line, he kept it on the other side of the goal line, which was amazing. Illinois did end up scoring on 4th down, but
crazy.
Just special stuff by this defense, and it's every single drive. Guys are making big plays. Devin Sanchez got his turn today with Lorenzo Styles being out, and I thought he held his own. Caleb got into some action too. Just so many superlatives that you could say about this Ohio State defense, and they're so fun to watch.
I mean, Malone, Curry, Jackson, the whole defensive line, I thought, did a really, really nice job today. To illustrate a little bit what I was saying, Ohio State had 11 drives. Obviously, let's take the last one out of it because they kneeled down to end the game. So think about it as 10 drives. Their average starting field position was their own 45-yard line, and that includes the last drive where they started on their own 25. But it's not quite that straightforward of thinking, oh, they start on their own 45 every time. Think about it where they were on their scoring drives and where they were on the drives they didn't score. On their scoring drives, they started with substantially better field position. Illinois 35, Illinois 38, Illinois 26, Illinois 24. Those were 4 of the 6 scoring drives. The others were Ohio State's 37-yard line and the opening drive of the game when they kicked the field goal. On the 4 drives, they did not score. The 3rd drive of the game, they started on their own 27, 5 plays, and punted after 1 first down. They started on their own 25, went 3 and out. They started on their own 23, went 3 and out. And essentially, when the game at that point was out of reach, the second last drive of the game for the Buckeyes with 4 minutes to go in the game, they started at Illinois' 45 and went 3 and out and punted there. But I guess my point is, I don't know if people realize this or not, and it doesn't matter. You won by 18 points. But Illinois outgained Ohio State today, 295 to 272.
Jeez.
I mean, Ohio State's offense only had 272 yards of total offense. That's not good. Like, let's not confuse that with good at all. Julian was fine, 19 of 27 for 166 and 2 touchdowns. Didn't turn it over. Ohio State never turned the football over. That's great. 37 carries for 106, a 2.9 average it's not good. That's not a Ryan Day offense at all. So credit to those guys for converting on short fields and making Illinois pay for their mistakes. That's part of winning. And that matters just as much as it does driving 99 yards to put one in the end zone. It doesn't feel the same way, but it's great. Yeah. I think Iowa fans would love to see what Ohio State did today. They would love to have 34 points on the board because their defense created turnovers and their offense actually finished drives, right? So, again, this isn't a complaint. This isn't trying to sound bitter. Just trying to point out that, like, Illinois is a really good team. Ryan said it all week. They had a bad day against Indiana, but they felt like schematically some things broke down there that Illinois then went and addressed, and that this was not going to be that kind of game. And I guess if I'm playing Ohio State, I probably approach it a similar way of like, hey, listen, there's certain guys on the field. We're not going to let Jeremiah have 200 receiving yards. Yeah. And after Carnell Tate did what he did against Minnesota, we're not letting you throw him, 45-yard post routes either. Like, we're just going to park a couple guys back and make you beat us in the intermediate and short games. And maybe Julian Saint's just taking what the game is giving him. And so you got to live with that.
Yeah, and there's a couple times today, and I wrote about it, and you'll see this article over on Buckeyes Roundtable when it does go live. But I think that's one of the more impressive things that I found in Julian's game so far. That you oftentimes get young quarterbacks who, in a game like today, it's a perfect example of, hey, it feels bottled up, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel smooth, and coach calls a shot play. And I got Jeremiah Smith out there who's been telling me all game. I'm not saying he's doing this, but my receivers have been telling me, I'm open. Give me a chance. And finally, coach calls a shot play. And the maturity you have to, hey, it's not there. I'm checking this thing down. I'm bringing it back down to the running back or the tight end. That to me, and he did it 3 or 4 different times, it stood out to me. I'm like, ooh, good play. Ooh, smart play. Smart. That to me gives me, if I'm a coach, that gives me faith in my guy, who I know that if I call something, he's not going to force it. In turn, that would allow me to call more of those plays, but that just we haven't gotten to that point yet. And I'm just curious to see I wish we could hear those conversations in those meeting rooms of like, hey, Julian, either you're close or you're missing something or whatever it may be. Because it does feel like they got this tight leash on him. They're not letting him go, which is something we're just going to have to keep watching.
The Buckeyes have another tough one next week at Wisconsin. When you're the preeminent power in college football, you're always going to get somebody's best shot. I realize Wisconsin's not having a great year, but I'm very confident Luke Fickell's going to have that team revved up and ready to go. And, especially when things get to a point where you maybe realize, hey, I don't think a college football playoff bid is likely, or I don't think we're going to win the conference championship. You start looking for those things that you can get up for. Yeah. And for every team left on the schedule, this is a game you can get up for. That's just period, point blank what it is. And so the Buckeyes have to stay sharp. And I think they'll be fine, but, Wisconsin's not going to be an easy game.
Brendan, look at it. Like exactly what we joked about UCLA, 10 minutes ago. but Wisconsin's in the same boat as UCLA. Penn State is going to try to save their season against you. So you talk about pulling out all of the stops. If they lose that game,
especially with Drew Aller, Northeast Ohio kid, if he goes next year, this is his last chance to go beat the Bucks.
Yeah. Guess what? They're not going to do. They're not going to punt. They're going to do trick plays. They're going to do all that stuff. And then UCLA is going to try to knock you down. Rutgers doesn't really scare you all that much. And then Michigan, you're going to have a chance to go up to Michigan and take them down. So it's like you're looking at these last, and it's really disgusting to say this, but last 6 games of the year, which is that's ridiculous. But you're like, hey, don't slip up. Don't slip up. You saw it last week. And Brendan, that's one of the really impressive things about this group is I talked about it this morning. They're so mature. They're never going to look past the team. They're so mature isn't the wrong word. They're so professional. This is just a professional bunch of guys. Like I can't imagine, their defense having a stinker because Sonny Styles won't let it happen, and neither will Caleb Downs. And on the offensive side, if it starts off slow, Jeremiah Smith isn't going to let it continue throughout the rest of the game. And like the leadership they have, and when your team's led by the players, coaches say this all the time. It's so coach speaky, but like when your best players are your best leaders and your hardest workers, you get teams that are very professional, mature, like Ohio State is, and that's my favorite part about this team.
34-16. Not sure there's much more to say beyond that. It was a good win.
I will say this before we get out. Sorry to interrupt you. There's something weird going on in Autzen right now. Indiana's hanging around. As we're recording this, it's 10-7 at the start of the second quarter, and those Hoosiers, especially after today, they have my attention.
I was not gutsy enough to pick Indiana to beat Oregon. I am not the least bit surprised that game is a tight game and that Indiana is going to give them a dogfight. I actually really like Indiana's team, and everybody's still riding the high from Cignetti and his first year and some of the stuff that he says. It becomes fun bulletin board material, but if you go look at their team, like how they play and what they do, they're pretty good and they're fearless. And the second part of that, I think is it's the hardest thing to conjure up. They believe they can go beat some of these juggernaut teams. And I mean, they went to the playoff last year, right? Like they have a reason to think that they can get it right. And I'm very interested, especially watch the second half of that game and see what happens.
It's fun, man. The Big Ten, the top of the Big Ten is a lot of fun. It's Ohio State, it's Oregon, it's Indiana, it's Michigan, and that's kind of that's the bunch right there. And obviously, we don't have Indiana or Oregon on our schedule right now, but you'll catch one of them hopefully in the Big Ten championship game, and then maybe catch one of them in the playoffs. But those 4 are really carrying the water in the Big Ten, and there's 4 really damn good football teams.
No doubt. 34-16. The Bucks never trailed. Comfortable win, I suppose. Really good defensive performance. Not a great offensive day. Not terrible, but not great. And we'll keep
Get over to Buckeyes Roundtable. Follow us and follow along the conversation.
For sure. We would love to have you over there. Let us know what you think when you get to Buckeye Roundtable. Just click join on the top of the screen. You pop your email in, and you can interact with us in the communities and participate in our game threads and lots of other stuff. We'd love to have you over there. So hope to see you over there. Obviously, the link is on the bottom of the screen, and we will chat with you again soon. Ohio State 34, Illinois 16, another Buckeye winner.